So there's a lot with redistricting. It's like a game of Jenga. You move one piece and the whole damn tower starts to shake.
Jenga. That's good. I like the Jenga reference. This is why, Mike, that you haven't seen till recently, and I don't even know that much recently, you haven't seen Republicans in the House saying they're all for this.
Of course.
Because they have their seats and they're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, those Texas Republicans, if they open up Pandora's box, you don't know what's going to happen. You have a safe seat now, and you're like, oh, they can't mess with my seat by more than 1 or 2 points. Oh, yeah? Watch what happens depending on how greedy somebody gets, like the Trump White House, when they don't care about your one Republican seat. They don't care about your career. They're looking at trying to pick up 3, 4, 5 seats. You can't move 5 seats in Texas without moving everybody's map considerably. So everybody's district in Texas changes, Republicans and Democrats. Like, this is not as easy as it sounds. This gets messy quick.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote Podcast, coming to you live again from Casa Rocha. Mike Madrid, there's a lot of red behind you. Where are you at, man?
I'm in Mexico today. I'm using the same thematic for the office down here as my office up in the States, the United States. But I will tell you this. I'm having a portrait done of Miguel Hidalgo, the father of the Mexican independence movement. So Lincoln will be behind me up in the United States. Hidalgo will be behind me up here or down here in Mexico. So people will know where I'm at if you are that interested. Red wall, but different portraits.
Thematic. Is that what you do to your suit when you get the wrinkles out of it?
That's what I don't wear a suit anymore, as you know. But I will probably be wearing a suit when I see you at NALEO, the NALEO conference coming up next week. This will air on Friday, and we've got NALEO coming up midweek. So we'll have to bring our laptops, our microphones, and do a little bit of interviews on the ground there with folks, and maybe do a little podcast show there from NALEO in Atlanta.
Next Wednesday for all of you who are listening. I bet there's a lot of NALEO members who listen to the podcast. Shout out to all the NALEO members. We'll be at the conference on, we get there Tuesday evening. We're speaking at 12:30 on next Wednesday. That's a good reminder for Andreas and Mike that we probably can move up the recording a little bit on Wednesday and just do it live from the hotel in Atlanta. I haven't even looked to see where we're staying at. I'm sure it's some posh, nice foo-foo place because Mike Madrid does not stay in some Motel 6.
I'm not slumming it. Not slumming it.
Not no more.
No.
Not anymore. Well, let's see what's going on in the news. There's not much happening. We'll get to the Epstein files in a little bit so you can reveal them to everyone. That's a joke. Mike Madrid does not have the Epstein files. But last night in Arizona, because this is the Latino Vote Podcast, there was a Latino special election in a district that's about 64% Latino population. It spans the entire border of Mexico and Arizona. It's where our great friend Raul Grijalva represented for years and years and years. God rest his soul. I just got through writing a Substack op-ed. Mike, you ain't the only one that can write a Substack op-ed to send to my team to put in English and then put into sentences. So that should be coming out talking about this race. But I want to do my quick hit and then throw it to Mike. For all of you who've been following this race, his daughter's running, Adelita Grijalva. She's a elected supervisor there. There was also a guy named Daniel Hernandez, who was an LGBTQ candidate who ran in the district next door in Arizona 6 last time in the primary and lost to a white woman named Laura Ingman. Can't believe I'm doing all this from memory, but welcome to Rain Man Chuck Rocha. And then lastly, there was a woman running who is on paper identified as let me get this right, Mike. She's a political social media influence is her job. Now, however I get that fucking job, I'd like to have it because I don't reckon you get your hands too dirty. But anyway, she is an influencer. And if you'd have been looking at this thing going in the last 2 weeks, you'd think she was going to win the whole thing because she got all the press. Everybody's talking about her. She's a second coming of Mondani in New York. She had young David Hogg on the ground with her, organizing, mobilizing. David's PAC. Remember when everybody threw a fit that he was raising all that money to beat incumbents? He put money into this race, got behind her. And when it was all said and done, I'm going to give you the final, then throw it to Mike. Everybody got their ass whooped except for Miss Grijalva, who literally won by 30 points over everybody. And if you take all the other candidates and add their votes together, she still wins by 10 points. Like, she did not just win, she gave him an ass thumping. And the last thing I'll say is the money. Mr. Hernandez, Mike, had $1 million. Miss Grijalva raised $890,000. And young Miss Doja Fox raised $650,000. Now, give me your take.
So I was interested in this race because everything that was happening in the wake of the Zoran Mamdani race was happening. And there was a lot of online polls that were showing Mrs. Fox making up a huge amount of ground on Grijalva, which I always thought was a little bit suspect. But you never know in this environment. First of all, I'm not a big fan of purely online panel polling. Just not a big fan of it. But the movement was what was interesting. It's always what I'm looking for in a race is what's the upside, what's the downside. This particular set of polling did not show Grijalva moving up or down, showed she had kind of a hard floor and ceiling, but was still up by about 10, 12 points as close as it got. With a blowout like this, you got to start asking yourself a couple questions. One, what is the efficacy of this polling? Two, has the national media been reading too much into the Zoran Mamdani race? Three, are there unique characteristics of this race because the Grijalva name is legendary in those parts of Arizona? And then four, do any of us know anything about the way the rules of politics work anymore? And that, I think, was really starting to become the question. And I think most folks, myself, the people who reached out to me with some of this polling data say, can you do some analysis for us and give us a good look at what's going on in this race? We're asking whether or not they should be throwing money into the Fox seat. And looking at the online panels, even though it was showing this dramatic closing, I was like, I would not touch this. This doesn't smell right. Grijalva's the main thing to be looking at in the polling was Grijalva's numbers were not moving down. And with so much vote unconsolidated, that means your base is secure in this business. And if you're an incumbent with the Grijalva name in a Latino district, when your base is sitting at a solid 40, 42% and isn't moving down and there's still a lot of undecideds, I'm going to bet on the incumbent name 99% of the time. And that's essentially, I think, what happened here. Now, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of media navel gazing on this, although there should be, because I don't believe that this idea that there's a upsurgence of democratic socialism in the Democratic Party as the way to save the party is correct. I'm not going to say it's wrong either, but when you've got people like Ruben Gallego winning the same Latino working class votes and Adelita Grijalva now doing the same thing along the border and Zoran Mamdani winning in New York, that tells me something pretty clearly, and that is this is not ideology that's running this. This is people looking for the best, strongest, most solid candidates. And they're also going to reject those really bad candidates. I mean, Andrew Cuomo's not particularly the best candidate. Doesn't have he's got some pretty high negatives. I don't want to ramble on here because I want your opinion on this. You know this part of the country really, really well, and you know the candidate really well. But I think I just want to wrap up on it by saying there should be more discussion about this race than there will be, because I think it is giving us some insight about the state and flux of the Democratic electorate. And to me, it's coming together. It's consolidating far more than it is splintering apart. There is no civil war in the Democratic Party, although there is this upsurgence of candidates that are anti-establishment, and we're going to see how that all plays out. So what are your thoughts?
My first thought is I want to give Daniel Hernandez and Doja Fox their kudos for running. It's hard to run for office and to take on the incumbent's daughter. I think it's important that there's room for all three of these candidates in our larger Democratic Party. I admire what both of them have done. Daniel had a lot of labor support, I noticed. Obviously, Doja had a lot of online following and was doing a lot of things in social media that folks thought was the end all be all. I don't dig into the polling numbers as much as you, but I dig into tactics of seeing how you spend your money. You want to tell me your priorities? Show me your budget. Where are you spending money? no peso, no say so. You can't bullshit Chuck Rocha. When candidates come to me, Michael laugh. Mike Madrid, I'm running a different kind of campaign over here. I'm going to run a grassroots campaign. We're going to take them on and we're going to win with the grassroots campaign. And Mike's shaking his head and rubbing his head because we hear that all the time. That means I'm not going to raise any money. I'm going to put up some yard signs and I'm going to knock on enough doors to win. Well, boys and girls, in theory, sounds good. And then if you say that's how AOC won or somebody else, you'd be wrong as well. There's a lot of things that need to happen, and you need to combine what Doja Fox did with what Grijalva did. A couple things here jumped out at me. One is Ruben Gallego and Senator Mark Kelly with the incumbent. I think that goes a long way in a Democratic primary. Does that help her win overwhelmingly? No, but it helps. Second of all, this can't be a moderate versus progressive versus whatever race, because this is a good reminder for all of you. AOC, Bernie Sanders, endorsed Grijalva. So you can't be saying that Doja was some kind of progressive left winger and she had all, even though David Hogg was with her. The institutional progressive movement was with Raul, her father. And we should say that, who was a lion in the progressive world.
Yeah.
And you know what his pet project was? Sure, it was immigration and the border, but his big was public lands and the environment. He fought to keep more spaces wild and public for hunters and fishermen than anybody. He was the old professor. When I wrote the op-ed this morning, I talked about how he accepted me in when a lot of people in D.C. didn't when I first got here because of how I talked, how I showed up with no college degree. And he was always open to my staff. And he was just like, reminded me of an old math teacher, like back in high school. Like he showed up kind of disheveled. Like he never was worried about his appearance. And he just show up and he was always at the club and like, not the club like the disco, but at the Democratic Club, having breakfast and hanging out. So the other tactical thing I saw was, Mike News will know that I looked at this, is that the young upstart social media influencer had a bunch of consultants from other states. She had no Latino consultants that were the owners of the firm that she was paying. There could have been Latino staffers that I'm unaware of, but where her money went was to white-owned firms to do a lot of digital work. And I think that means something. As much as Grijalva is not perfect, she ran a damn good centered campaign, and she got to use her father's network. And then, again, boys and girls, in a low turnout special election, whoever can get the 3 of 3s to show up normally votes, normally wins, right? Well, guess what? She hired a 100% Latino owned and operated digital and media firm who had done work in Arizona before, who had folks from Arizona. So her ads were great. And she didn't outspend everybody. So I think all of those things together, it's just, I get tickled, Mike, when I start hearing about how, oh my God, the press is so quick to run down a little hole of, oh my God, this 25-year-old woman, because she's pretty and she's smart and she's got a few I shouldn't say YouTube, but YouTube, TikToks or whatever, is not the end all be all. You still have to run a basic structure of a campaign, right?
There's no question about it. But like you said, I mean, you got to do both nowadays. And that's right. That's exactly it. It's not an either or proposition, but this idea that even Zoran Mamdani won because he's, this fresh, attractive, charismatic face doing amazing things on social media. Yeah, that does help control the narrative, but you've got to have an infrastructure. You can't just
spend $9 million on TV.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Yeah, I mean, come on. That's the traditional way of doing things. You've got to have a traditional infrastructure. You have to have an actual campaign. You can't just do this on TikTok. And if you think you can, then, just watch what happened in Arizona the other night. So congratulations to Ms. Grijalva, an incredible family name in politics, in American politics, certainly in Arizona politics. The professor was a great man. He was a warrior for social justice. I remember sitting down with Luis Gutierrez, Congressman Gutierrez, when they had all been arrested, I think in the Dominican Republic or somewhere. They got arrested, and they were worried because he was, he's an older guy, and he was, he was a portly fella, and they could, sit in a cell in a third world country and deal with that kind of a thing. But he was like an old math professor, like you said, a good man, great heart, very well respected, kind presence, will be missed. It's great to see his daughter Adelita taking the mantle, and we'll see how she does. We'll have to get her on the show at some point.
And she's the next generation when you talk about Democratic politics, because she is a young 52 years old. Whippersnapper is what I like to call them. Young 50. 50 is the new 30 for all you non-Mexicans out there. The next topic, Mike, since I've given you none of the topics, it's like I'm interviewing today because I haven't told you anything because you're in Mexico. But The next thing I want to talk about won't surprise you, but I want to talk about the great state of Texas and about a bunch of crazy people in a special session talking about redistricting. Have you heard about this?
I have heard about it, and they better be really careful. But why don't you give the viewers and listeners an overview of what's going on in Texas? Then I'm going to tell you what's going on in California in response.
Oh, my God. I forgot about that. You're the perfect person to answer that. All right. So in Texas, Donald Trump knows that the midterms can be problematic because of the most out-of-party campaign or parties, the Democrats, pick up seats in the off year, and the Republicans can't lose but like 3 or 4, and then we take over, so not much. So they're trying to put more seats in play. And a place to do that is Texas, where there's a ton of congressional seats in a red state and a ton of Democratic seats, even though the numbers aren't skewed. It's still like 70% Republican, 30% Democrats, but that's not good enough for them. So they want to go in the middle of a term. Keep in mind, girls and boys, I don't want to talk to you like you're stupid, so don't get mad, folks. Not Mike Madrid, but you listeners. I know you know this, but I got to say it. We do reapportionment every 10 years. We look at how many people moved to the state or moved out of the state. Every congressional district has to be the same. Some states who gain population gets more seats. Those who lose population, Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, other North states, they lose it. Over periods of time, y'all, Mike Madrid has actually talked about that. You've had a whole movement of white people move from the Northeast to the South and the Southwest, Florida, Texas, and New Mexico and Arizona, and you've restructured the whole congressional map because of this growth, because you've had to add new seats. Well, these Republicans have controlled that redistricting, and most of the new seats that have been added have been Republican. So what Donald Trump wants to do is ask the governor of Texas, to go in and have a special session, which they can do, to redraw congressional seats to get Republicans more seats. And the 4 seats that they're looking at are majority minority seats in urban areas of Texas. There's 3 of them in Houston, majority Latino and Black seats. All 3 of them are majority. I don't mean by a little bit. I mean like 80 and 90% Black and brown seats in Houston. And then the VC seat in Dallas-Fort Worth, which ironically, Mike Madrid, is represented by a Black man, but has more Latino voters than almost any district in the state. But guess what? Latinos don't vote in primaries in Texas. Black people do. The Black people outvote the Latinos, and you get a marked VC, and who does real good at representing them as well. So they're trying to do this in this, and I'll wrap up by saying the whole reason we thought we were going to have a special session in Texas, which you have every right to do, but you have to say why you're having it by law. And what the governor said, instead of saying we're going to do it to fix our emergency response system because we don't do very good at adhering to flooding, he said we're going to use this to do redistricting. And by the way, if we get to it, we'll do some of this emergency response stuff and see what we can do about letting people know when there's floodwaters coming. So I set it up for you that way, Mike.
That's a great setup, because this is the first salvo. There's a word for you. This is the first salvo. Yeah, in what is going to be a decades-long fight over some really fundamental questions in our politics, and it's going to be the topic of this show a lot over the course of the next 10 years. Let me explain why. First, I want to tackle the Texas redistricting effort and California Governor Gavin Newsom's response. Because California, we got a lot of voters too, and we can draw out a lot of Republicans too. So, but we've got some barriers, but that is going to be the response. The second is Texas Republicans may be making the same mistake that Texas Democrats made. And I'm going to get into just that in just a second too, because Latino voters are going to be changing a lot. And for them to think that minorities are minorities is a really big mistake. And as Chuck pointed out very astutely, there are a lot of Black congressional members that represent Latino majority districts, like Maxine Waters. Okay, these are Latino districts. Latinos don't have the same turnout rates. African Americans have much higher turnout rates, despite conventional wisdom. And so you've got a lot of Black members of Congress and state legislators that represent essentially Latino districts on paper. So let me run through all 3 of those very quickly. California is unique in that we passed by voter initiative. In other words, we changed our constitution to say that we would have a quote-unquote independent redistricting commission. So we impanel about 12 to 15 different members chosen from the public with a partisan and occupational diverse background to redraw all of our state assembly, Senate, and congressional districts. We took it out of the hands of our politicians for precisely the abuse that Texas is just saying now it's going to engage in. So if we were to retaliate with a much bigger state with much more people than Texas, we would have to go to the ballots to do it. Could that get done? Yes, it could get done. Is it likely to get done? Yes, it is likely to get done. If we partisanize this and show that Texas is trying to make this Republican Trump grab, nothing flies better in California than being anti-Trump. So yes, it is possible, difficult, because both of these states, if they do go down this road and start playing this game of nuclear annihilation through redistricting, are going to have to face the courts as to whether or not these newly drawn partisan lines, and that's why they would be doing it, meet constitutional muster. There's another word for you, salvo and muster. You mix a little bit together, you got a really good salad going. But if it doesn't pass constitutional muster, then those lines can get thrown out. And that's where this gets dangerous, because the courts have the right to get in to both legislatures' business and draw the lines that are more appropriate and meet constitutional and legal requirements. That is possible. That has happened before in California. It's happened in other states. It's happening right now in like North Carolina when some of these other challenges happen.
Didn't it happen in New York when they overstepped?
It did. So that's what you've got to be really careful with. The courts can jump in and say, we don't care if the people drew them. We don't care if the politicians drew them. If they don't meet a constitutional standard, we'll draw them. The courts will draw them. And yes.
Mike, what do you mean by a constitutional standard?
So a congressional district has to meet what's identified as quote unquote a community of interest, which means you have to put communities that look, sound, and act and have some sort of interest in together to prevent the gerrymander that used to prevent Black people and dilute their power. That's the way we used to prevent Black people from having communities or Black districts back in the day. Is they would peel just one little Black community and put it in a white district. Another little piece of it, put it in another white district. And these communities didn't have anything in common with the larger white communities, but the purpose was to diffuse and take away any representation for Black districts. In response, under the Civil Rights Act, 1964, what we did was we created a standard that said you have to meet a community of interest. There has to be some rationale for a community that is put inside this congressional district. And that's why you start to see some of this gerrymandering too. These, only half of the highway is represented for 6 miles to bring in this other group of persons. You can argue sometimes right, sometimes wrong, that there's more Democrats up north, 5 miles up the road, so let's loop in that city, and we'll use it under the argument that they're Black voters or they're minority voters or whatever they are, but they're really just Democrats in order to preserve a district. Some of those have met constitutional standards, some of them have not. But my point is, when both sides, and when the Republicans are saying we're going to draw more Republican districts and dilute Democratic registration and representation, and the California Democrats say, well, then we're going to respond in kind, you're asking for a court battle. And the danger is, if you take it out of your hands completely, the courts could end up making you lose seats as opposed to picking up seats. That's one. Gets better. And that redistricting is everything, guys. It's once a decade, as Chuck said, but this is where everything is determined for the next decade. As Latino votes start to change, you're going to hear this first. I'm going to be writing a lot on this, talking about this a lot, because this is coming. It's very hard to define a Latino community of interest. Because if you look at Starr County in Texas, we used to say, well, that's easy. The Rio Grande Valley, it's just a bunch of Democrats, lump them into a Democratic Latino district because, of course, now those counties are voting Republican. So what does that mean? Does that mean you keep it together as a Latino district? Or do you split it up into a Republican and Democratic district to give those voters more of a representation based off of their partisan proclivities? Does that make sense? In other words, am I creating a Latino district, or because we used to believe that Latinos voted as Democrats, we're not believing that as much anymore because they're not. So what happens when they start to change their voting preferences? Do we still have Latino districts? I'm saying, here for Mike Madrid first, at the next census drawing, the courts are going to start throwing out Latino districts because there's no such thing. You can't argue that Starr County is a Latino district. You can start arguing it used to be Democrat, now it's Republican district. But what does that mean in terms of ethnicity or ethnic voting bloc? It's very hard to make that distinction when Latinos are now voting 50-50. Trump got 48%, right? In the last Pew poll against Harris's 51%. So if you start crunching all of these folks, and the Democrats could run into a big danger too. They start trying to preserve and protect Latino districts, they may be turning them over to Republicans pretty quick and making them a hell of a lot more competitive. So back in the day, and it wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago, the idea was we need to protect these Latino districts. That's a Latino seat. It's like, well, you may get a Latino seat, but it's going to be a Latino Republican seat by the end of the next decade. And that's where the Democrats' real dilemma is. And Republicans, again, they've got the opposite problem with the same challenges. How do you draw in, and do you take the risk of drawing in some of these Latino districts like a Starr County into a Republican seat, heading into a midterms where these Latinos are in all likelihood going to push back and go revert back to voting for the Democrats because they're pissed off at the Republicans at this moment.
So the question I have, a lot of questions. One is, I don't care how Latinos are voting in Starr County. It's still 92% Latino. It should still be by law a Latino county or like-minded with others. What you're talking about is partisan. Does courts care about that?
They do, because that creates a community of interest.
A Democrat or Republican is considered an interest to them?
Well, what you're saying, it has been. That's why the Democrats have used this as a weapon for 35, 45 years. Is what they're really trying to do is protect the Democratic Party's power. They're not trying to protect an ethnic or racial group's power. They'll say they will. They're using that, but that's not what they're really interested in. Watch what happens when all these Democrat lawyers are going to start saying, let's bust up these Latino districts, because these Latinos vote more Republican, these vote more Democrat. The Democratic Party doesn't care about a Latino community of interest. The Democratic Party cares about a Democratic Party community of interest. And that's my point.
I've lived through this before for all of you old heads like me and Mike, with Tom DeLay in Texas back in the day.
Right.
Midterm, and it bit him in his ass. And what worries me, and I don't think they should do this redistricting. I think it's stupid, all the things. But if you look at it from 30,000 feet, and Andreas, our producer here in the YouTube video, let's show some pictures of the way that these 4 congressional seats look on a map. So we're going to put up the 9th.
What?
We're going to put up the 29th.
What?
We'll put up the 33rd, and I'll get you the other ones. But it's 4 districts.
In Texas.
In Texas. The 9th, the 29th, and the 33rd. If you see from a map how these things look, and I looked at them yesterday, and they are crazy looking. When Mike's talking about communities of interest, I finally figured out what they had done. And again, I don't have a problem with it as a Democrat. I'm happy that we have these districts, and they are great members of Congress. But what they did in Houston or Dallas in these districts is they went all over the city, connecting all these Black and Latino communities and giving all of these districts, all the Black and Latinos in these areas, because the districts around them, some of which are Republican, they do not want Black or Latino voters, to Mike's point, there, because hypothetically, Black people are going to vote at 90%, and Latinos used to vote at 70%. And in some of these inner cities, they still vote at probably pretty close to 70, but I would argue that it's at least fell off 10 points, if not 15.
Right.
So what do? So you've taken all these Black and brown people, and some of these districts, for those of you watching on YouTube, and you should be subscribed to the YouTube. If you're not, shame on you. My God, I wear some amazing outfits on this program. But anyway, I digress. If you look at the district, I've got my hand up like a C. And one of those congressional districts look like that. And it's not as, I don't know the Georgetown word, where it's all together in a C. It's a squiggly C. Just trying to get every Latino and Black person in the inner city of Houston in one of those seats. And the seats are Sylvia Garcia, Andreas. It is the open 18th district is the one I forgot about. Sorry about that. 18th. So it's open.
What the hell?
It's not even up. It's a special election because the congressman died during the State of the Union, remember? I don't mean to laugh.
Yeah.
Sylvia Garcia, then the 18th, and then Al Green, who stood up in the State of the Union, and they expelled him with a cane. Remember the guy waving the cane?
Yeah.
It's his district, Mike Madrid. This is why you have me on the podcast, because I know so much about Texas congressional district. And the other one is Mark Vesey. And Mark Vesey is one of my best friends, and I love Mark Vesey. We came up under Martin Frost. But Mark Vesey's district, there is Dallas. For those of you watching YouTube, you're missing it if you're listening to this. I got a fist up. This is Dallas. This is Fort Worth. And Interstate 30 runs parallel between the two, Mike. The district takes in all of this area that connects it on this highway, goes into Fort Worth, into the southeastern corner, gets the poorest black areas, and Mark Vesey's a damn good congressman for them. And then it goes into Dallas, just next to Oak Cliff, which is Jasmine Crockett's district, and takes in a bunch of Latinos and black folks in Dallas, connecting those two communities down an interstate. It looks like a dumbbell. So, but around that district's lots of Republicans. So for those of you thinking about this, whoever they make this district more quote unquote Republican, they got to get these Democrats to somebody. Right, Mike?
Yeah. Then what they're going to do is they're going to dilute them. They're going to cut off just enough to not affect the Republicanness of the district, but split it up in 3, 4, 5 different ways. So there's no Democratic district left anymore. It's just going to be consumed by the surrounding Republican districts. That's the goal. That's the aim. That's what they're going to try and pull off. But like I said, and Tom DeLay's the perfect example. Again, good thing Chuck and I have been around for so long. This stuff rarely works out for people that are trying to pull one over on the public. People push back. It bit DeLay in the ass. It will probably bite Republicans in the ass. It'll probably bite Democrats in the ass if they respond. But this is just a pure power grab. Redistricting is the most crass power political plays you can imagine, because people, 30, 40-year Congress members lose their jobs. They lose their seats. Staff gets thrown out. All these powerful interests, the caucuses get bigger and smaller based off of how these lines are drawn. The drawing of lines is everything in a representative government, everything. And so, yeah, for the fact that they're reopening this up mid-decade is absurd, but it tells you how worried they are and should be. But there are remedies. There are ways to fight back. It kind of allows America to continue to devolve into this partisan bullshit instead of actually solving problems.
We saw this just happen for those of you political geeks and nerds who we love. In the last census in a place like Nashville, Tennessee, and stay with me. Nashville, and Mike is old enough to remember that there was always 2 Democrats in Tennessee. There was always a black Democrat that represented Memphis and the 9th district, if I have that correct. It's funny. It's still a black district, but it's represented by a white guy now, but it's a Democrat. But what they did in Nashville, where it used to be a blue dot in Nashville, is they took that district and moved it and just did away with the whole congressional district. And you say, well, how's that, Chuck? They still have to have that number. They did. But what they did is they built one around it. And each one of those districts, to Mike Madrid's point, come into Nashville and take a neighborhood or two to where they all come in like spokes in a wheel. Or like if you cut up a piece of cheesecake into squares, every congressional seat around Tennessee got a piece of Nashville. And so they diluted it, to Mike's point.
Yeah.
And that's what they're looking at doing in a place like Harris County. Keep in mind, now Harris County is ginormous. It's bigger than many, many states in the Northeast. Like there's millions and millions of people in Harris County around Houston, right? So what I don't understand, and which will be interesting to see how they would do it, y'all, is that these are some of the most Democratic seats, and they're the heaviest population of Black and Latinos. And so many of these are somewhat surrounded by other Democrats because there's just so many Democrats. So like VC is the easiest to mess with because on his Fort Worth side, it's complete Republicans over there. What they did, Mike, is in the Fort Worth, they gave him all the Democrats in Fort Worth, which is in the poorest neighborhood, so that the other Republicans around Fort Worth didn't have to deal with those Democrats. And then they connected him to these Democrats in Dallas next to the ultra black district, which is Jasmine Crockett. And then the suburban district outside of Jasmine Crockett, which is Julie Johnson, which used to be the Colin Allred seat, which was a swingy seat. So that seat up there, you have a lot more Republican space to play with. That one, I can see them really trying to mess with Mark Vesey. But in these Houston seats, it's a Democrat surrounded by another Democrat because there's just it's like LA to you.
Yeah.
You have so many seats like that, right?
Yeah. And they're not trying to get all of those seats. But what they are trying to do is mess with the periphery, the Allred seat, the old Allred seat. That's what they're trying to do, is move them from swingy to, safe Republican seats. Because in a year like this, look, the historical trend line, the issues matrix and the turnout model all benefit the Democrats heading into this midterm. Barring something cataclysmic, the Democrats will have a good, solid majority in November of 2026. That's a very good proposition bet right now. But the only way that the Republicans can defend against that is by solidifying some of these swing seats that are probably going to break away from them by 3, 4, 5 points this cycle, by making them 3, 4, 5 points stronger. That's what they're trying to do. They're not trying to split up Houston. And they're not trying to get rid of all the Democrats. They're trying to say, let's solidify a couple of swing seats and maybe pick up 2 or 3 on the periphery. They're saying getting out to 5. You start picking up 5 congressional seats, you're looking at a court challenge. I mean, there's no way to get 5 more seats, even in a state as big as Texas, without really, really fundamentally altering and changing the map. And a lot of Republicans are going to get pissed off because you're also setting off. You can't look. Here's the other thing about maps. You can't just move 2 or 3 in Houston. You move 2 or 3 in Houston, you have to move the whole damn state. You start moving the whole damn state, you're going to start pitting Republicans against Republicans in primaries as demographics change in those districts too. Ain't going to be a whole lot of happy Republican Congress members when you got 2 guys that have been, in Congress for 30 years suddenly have to face off together in a primary. Like, they're not going to go for that. It's not. No, it's going to just be like, okay, I'm good with it. So there's a lot with redistricting. It's like a game of Jenga. You move one piece and the whole damn tower starts to shake.
Jenga. That's good. I like the Jenga reference. This is why, Mike, that you haven't seen till recently, and I don't even know that much recently, you haven't seen Republicans in the House saying they're all for this.
Of course.
They have their seats and they're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, those Texas Republicans, if they open up Pandora's box, you don't know what's going to happen. You have a safe seat now, and you're like, oh, they can't mess with my seat by more than 1 or 2 points. Oh, yeah? Watch what happens depending on how greedy somebody gets, like the Trump White House, when they don't care about your 1 Republican seat. They don't care about your career. They're looking at trying to pick up 3, 4, 5 seats. You can't move 5 seats in Texas without moving everybody's map considerably. So everybody's district in Texas changes, Republicans and Democrats. Like, this is not as easy as it sounds. This gets messy quick.
I think, to your point, when it first was announced, I was like, oh, I know they're going to talk about Texas 15, Texas 28, and Texas 34. We're talking about Vicente, the Republican seat in the middle. What's her name? Monica De La Cruz. And then Henry Cuellar. That's the 3 seats side by side on the border from Brownsville to Laredo. I was like, oh, all you got to do is move like 3 precincts in those, and you can make those that are now R+1s to R+10s real quick. But they didn't mention those. I was like, And then they mentioned that if you took 10% of the Democrats out of these seats I'm talking about, they're still electing Democrats, no matter what. So it's really important for you to listen to what Mike's saying. If you make those urban, downtown, and they are that, black and brown seats less Democratic, you've got to add something in around them. So again, YouTubers, you got to be watching at home to get the good shit. This is, my fist is the downtown district. In the Houston districts, there's another Democratic seat that's not a D+25, but it's a D+10. And then in Houston, I forgot her name. She's in the Woodlands, just northwest. She's got a district that's only like D+2 or 3. That's the one they want. Because if they move this one and this one around it, it makes this one more wobbly and the one outside of it gone.
Exactly. But that's exactly right. You nailed it. That's what they're trying to do. But again, even if you're just trying to steal 1 or 2 seats, you have to move the whole map. Nothing stays solid. Everybody's district changes. And maybe they can get away with, maybe they can pull it off. But it's very, very hard to do. Even moving a couple of towns one way, this way, or that way changes the whole state's map. And you're going to end up with members who are not happy about it. You will. Because what's going to happen invariably is you're going to start pitting Republicans against Republicans in the next primary, because they're going to start looking at the way the district is moving and it's changing. And you take one of my towns of 50, 80,000 people, and I've got to make a decision. Do I want to run against this Republican, or do I want to fight a Democrat coming, now that my seat's gotten more swingy? And these were not decisions I had to make. I made a 10-year plan, and then you guys come in and change this for no good reason other than Donald Trump's become unpopular in the party and you're trying to save the midterms. Like, that doesn't go over well in the Republican caucus.
Stay tuned to the redistricting in Texas. This will be something that, between Mike Madrid living through lots of redistricting and my intimate knowledge of these precincts and cities inside these congressional seats, things could change. And let me warn you, Texas Republicans, You go to changing seats around, and you Republicans going to end up getting you a primary. Because there's folks in Texas that don't think, a lot of crazy MAGA folks think you Texas, and there's some reports on it this morning. Last night, the Chuck Rocha porn was released, which is FEC reports for all of you thoughting bad thoughts about my porn habits. It was actually FEC numbers. And I like looking at how much money you've raised. That's some of the things. Maybe I used to look at naked girls, but now I look at numbers because I'm old. So I'm looking at numbers and trying to figure out who is spending what money where. And two things jumped out at me. One, there were 2 Texas Republicans who have opposition running against them already, Mike Madrid, who've raised over $1 million of outside money because MAGA types don't think they're quote unquote MAGA enough. One is the one-eyed fella. That's a horrible analogy, but the guy who wears the patch. And then
Dan Crenshaw.
Crenshaw's one. And he's in a suburban seat outside of San Antonio. And so another one is, I forgot the name, but the one that really caught my eye, which is the U.S. Senate race in Texas. Cornyn had said he'd raised $3 million in that quarter. Guess what? He didn't. Cornyn raised $800,000 is all he raised for a Senate race in a quarter, and he's up in next November. While Dan Paxton, crazy Attorney General, MAGA, raised $2.4 million.
Yeah, this race could be a train wreck for the Texas Republicans. I mean, I don't know if Cornyn can beat him off in that primary. I don't know if he can. Yeah, I don't think so. That's Paxton's, and Paxton's
without Bush. My God, without Trump on the ticket.
Well, and Trump's dual endorsed or some weird stuff. I mean, Paxton is full blown MAGA. He's a train wreck. His state Senate wife just filed for divorce. It's going to get messy. He's got all this corruption charges behind him, but he's up 20 points.
He's been impeached by the U.S. House, just like Trump, but not convicted in the Senate.
It's just a mess. And you don't need more than a couple 3-point defection in Texas to make this a really interesting dynamic. Allred's running. He did overperformed last time. This is going to be a good Democratic year nationally. Cornyn could hold that seat, without a blinking. You put in Paxton, the Republicans are in trouble there. Trouble. And again, that's going to affect all these down ticket House races in like Crenshaw's suburban swing district. That's going to have an impact. A 2 to 3 point impact on turnout or defection is going to change control of the House of Representatives. So they're playing with fire. The Republicans in Texas really got to be careful. But having worked with Republicans, especially Republicans in Texas for decades, I will tell you right now, they cannot help themselves. They will be moths to the flame. They can't help it.
Couple more quick hitters to get Mike's reaction on, since I didn't give him no advance warning on any of this, so it's my favorite thing to do to Mike. Yesterday in California 22, softballs for you, is a Democratic Assembly member named Jasmeet Baines has announced she's going to run against David Valadao. She is a Democratic Assembly member. She's Indian American, I think, a doctor, I think. Mm-hmm. And I think this is probably the party establishment's pick. There's a Latino guy running. Actually, I think I know for a fact my team has been helping him get out and get announced. He's on a college trustee board, and he's a working class Mexican. So watching him, so you got this working class Mexican guy who's elected to a small board. You have this Indian American woman now who's probably going to be the D-Trip, or they can't officially get in, but let's just call it the party establishment's pick. She's got infrastructure she's ran before. And then David Valadao, again, in California. What's your take on how this thing could shake out? Do you think more people will get in, or will this be their ticket?
So that's a great question. And this seat is it's the real anomaly here. This seat on paper should be a Democratic seat, should have been years ago. The one time it did flip was when David Valadao lost in 2018 in the first Trump midterm. This is sizing up to be that kind of a year. What has changed is this Republican rightward shift has become more pronounced. This seat has gotten more Republican as more working class Latinos are voting more and more Republican. So the question then becomes, do you go with a college-educated Indian woman? And there's a significant Indian Punjabi community in this district, by the way.
And she's opened up like healthcare clinics and is rooted in the community. We don't want to take that away from her.
Yeah. Or is it a Latino seat? And Democrats have been trying unsuccessfully for a long time to run Latino candidates. In fact, the one time that Valadao lost was to a white guy. So Rudy Salas, who's a good member, know Rudy well. I go on and on with all the Latino Democrats that have tried and lost. The Democrats are thinking maybe we've got to try a different mix here, and this may or may not be the right mix. But what I will say is this: the trend line, the history, and the issues all look like the 2026 election cycle will be stronger for Democrats than 2018, which was a record year for them. So any candidate they put up should do quite well. Valadeo, let's remember, he was the one who was pausing first on the big beautiful bill. He has the largest Republican district represented by Mexican Americans in the country. He also has the largest district of Medicare recipients, which is what Medi-Cal is called in California. Medicare recipients, Medicare is called Medi-Cal in California. Those are the highest in the country, okay, represented by a Republican. So if any seat is going to go away, it's going to be this one. But Valadeo has done a remarkable job of holding on to the seat by the skin of his teeth, and we're just going to have to wait and see. But I don't know that there is a silver bullet for Democrats here. I think they just got to put up any candidate and ride the wave that this year is sizing up to be, and then just kind of do all the tactics, do everything right, build the infrastructure, fund the race, and the chances are better than not that I think they pick it up.
Look at Randy Villegas. I'm going to spell it for you for those of you who want to look him up. Randy's last name is Villegas. If you were to create a profile for the perfect candidate, he would be the perfect candidate. Mexican-American, working class kids, families worked in the fields. He is a left of center populist. But guess what happens with most of those candidates like that? It's hard for them to raise money because they're not rich. They come from regular stock. They're regular folks. So he's trying to run a grassroots campaign. And he's raising money, and he's been impressive so far. And it'll really be interesting how this goes down on the ballot and how much money is spent. Again, full disclosure for everybody out there, we're doing work with Randy. We like Randy. I think if Randy can raise the money, Randy could easily win this thing because his profile is just so good. Nothing against the doctor or anybody else. I just want to beat Valadeo. I just think personally that Randy's the person. A couple more things that I want to get out of here is this morning on CNN, I did a hit, and Harry Enton, who does the polling stuff there, was talking about what's different this year, Mike, and it spurred me to want to ask you about this. He said this year should be a sweep, wave, whatever you call it for Democrats. Donald Trump's popularity is going down. He's floundering with Latinos, blah, blah, blah. Things are moving in the wrong direction right now. That could change. But he said, what makes it look different than, I think he said 06 and 18. And he said, as he looked at where the generic ballot was then and where it is today, he said the generic ballot in 18 right now was +7 Democrats, and today it's +2. Again, there can't be that much polling out there looking at this, but it's not as good as you would want it to be. When they asked me that question, I had to respond to it. I said, well, nobody's felt the hit of the big ugly bill yet. When inflation numbers now that we saw start creeping back up, which we saw this week, and I think that number will get worse for them. But I wanted your take.
So there's two ways to look at this, and I think Harry's a fine guy, Harry Enton, who does the polling for CNN, but I think he misses a lot. I think it's just because he hasn't been a practitioner the way you and I are. He is technically correct, but he's looking at it wrong. Let me explain why.
Yeah.
The generic ballot hasn't told us anything predictive in 20 years. But what the reason why those numbers are narrowing is because Democrats have a higher negative approval rating than they've had in ever, by the way. So what he's really saying is that the Democrats are not viewed as as good as an alternative to the Republican mess as they would ordinarily look. The Democrats have a real brand problem. And the brand problem, that is what this all comes down to, by the way. All of this comes down to the Democratic brand problem. That's what brought Harris down ultimately. Their own people don't show up for them anymore, and they're defecting at a higher rate than they ever have. Until they fix that, none of these other indicators are going to tell us much, right? That's why the generic ballot is where it's at. It's because people don't like the Democrats. Democrats don't like the Democrats. Now, campaigns are about choices. You don't get a C or a D choice. You get A or B. And right now, you would rather have B. You'd rather have the Democrats than the Republicans. That's the way to what we call construct a campaign environment. If you say, you have to pit them up with the issues matrix to say, would you rather have a generic candidate that supported this bill that cuts Medicare, that does all of these things, that voted against the Epstein file release, or would you rather vote for this candidate to this, and this? And there's a way to scientifically construct that without biasing it too much. It's impossible to not bias at all. But that's the way you should be looking at the race. And that's why, like I said, when you overlay that with the turnout model and the fact that Donald Trump is probably not going to have a very good turnout of his own base, especially with Latinos, you're going to have a real problem for Republicans unless they can turn things around significantly in the next 18 months, which I don't think they will. Inflation is just starting to catch fire again. We're heading into a recession. The Epstein scenario is going to get worse. He's made a complete mess of the Ukraine-Russia situation where now he's saying, let's bomb Moscow. Asked Zelensky, can he bomb Moscow? He's playing both sides because he's stuck. His own base is fracturing in an unprecedented way. Like, this is not good. This is not good. So the short answer is the problem that Democrats have, the main one is people don't like them as an alternative. But it's just like the analogy of the bear when you're out hiking in the woods with your friend. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just got to outrun your friend, right?
Or your wife. And my wife is skinny and can outrun me. So anytime we're going to see a bear, my fat ass is going to get eat up because Ebony Payne can outrun me on the trail.
Yeah. So that's really what it is they don't have to like you, but they just have to like you just a little bit more than the other guy.
That's why I like to hike with fat people. I just got to be faster than them.
Yeah. And that's where you need to. Yeah, if Democrats can improve their image and start standing for something and driving a message of what they're for, as opposed to just against. Look, I warned about this months ago on the show. My big fear is the Democrats are going to win in the midterms without learning any lessons.
Right, and then you go into a presidential year thinking you had it all figured out, and you get your ass handed to you. That ain't even hard for a Mexican redneck poet laureate thing over here. That's what I am. So the last two things, which are super quick because we're already out of time because Mike Madrid talks too much, is last night in D.C. there was a special election, Mike, that I know you're worried about, and it's in the Marion Barry ward. Now, let me be clear. In the Marion Barry ward in Ward 8, there was a special election because the incumbent there, young Trayon, who'd been elected a few times, got caught on camera taking some money to help out some of these folks who want a little contract work at the city by the FB and the I's. And so he's got some investigations going on. So the city council kicked young Trayon off the city council and said, you are now been abolished out. We're going to have a special election to replace you. And he was like, all right, y'all go at it. So he didn't. So we have a special election last night. And my young friend there decided he just run anyway. He didn't raise no money. He got out there, got him some T-shirts and some few signs, didn't file an FE report. But I'm here to report this morning that Trayon White has been reelected in Ward 8 here in Washington, D.C.
Of course he has. Oh, D.C. politics. Gotta love D.C. politics.
The same ward where Marion Barry, when he got ousted as the mayor, went back home and ran and got elected, which is right next to the ward where I live, where young Ebony Payne should be the next city councilwoman. But I digress and will say that in my closing comments today, I wanted you to know, Mike, that this is coming out on Friday. So y'all look this up and see the press coverage from it. Me and Tony Cardenas, the former congressman from LA, are having a press briefing today at the press club, Mike. That's why I have this white shirt on. I'm going to put a blazer on in a minute and go down to the press club downtown. And we're going to be rolling out the Capeones pack, where we're going to have a set of slides that show how the Latino vote has been moving. Don't sit, stay in your chair, moving to the right, and why it has been. How do we fix it? Is it the message? Is it the messenger? What's going on? How much money's been spent? When was it spent? But we have to stop what we're doing, or whatever we're doing ain't been working for a long time. So we're going to have a little press conference about that. How does that?
That's great. Congratulations. Yeah, if you're videotaping it, we'd love to air it. I'm going to send an invoice Because even though you guys figured it out years later, Mike Madrid's been saying this. I want to see how much of the solutions are Mike
shelf
Madrid.
date on these invoices.
Give Tony my best. Congratulations to both of you. That's fantastic news.
And for those of you listening at home, don't forget to follow us, like us, retweet, share this with all of your family. If you're Mexican, share it with all your cousins, because that way we can go from 1,000 to 2,000 people just with the cousin vote. So get them in there, like our YouTube. Today, there was a lot of hand puppets done around redistricting. If you missed the hand puppet show, if you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you'd see that live and in living color. Next week, we will be live from Atlanta, hot Atlanta. Me and Mike Madrid, we're thinking about having a few special guests with us. We're still figuring out the back end work, but I'm going to take my microphone and my laptop. Mike will show me how to set up in a remote location. And until then, me and Mike will see you in Atlanta next week. Y'all be good.